Welcome to Watch Me Go Broke. I'm just out here trying to get some exercise. Oh boy, just walking through the forest. There's a lot of snakes, a lot of spiders. I don't even know why I do this. It's absolutely terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. But I gotta do something to stay physically fit, so this is what I'm doing. On my wrist today is gonna be my Seiko Flightmaster with the Omega NATO. Or is it? For the past few years, I've been trying to find a NATO strap that is comparable to the Omega NATO, which if you guys follow this channel, you know that I think the Omega NATO is the best NATO in the world, and certainly that money can buy, because it's so expensive. But what if I told you that this NATO was $13, and it might match just about as close as you can come to the Omega NATO? Well, I'm out here fighting nature. Let's awkwardly bend over a table and take a look at the Mora NATO strap. All right, everybody, so pop quiz right off the bat. You can't see the logo on these particular NATO straps, so which one do you think is the Mora and which one do you think is the Omega NATO? I will give you 2 seconds. Well, if you said the one on the left was the Omega NATO, you would be incorrect. That is actually the Mora NATO strap. And of course, I've got my beloved Omega NATO strap on the right here. Now, this search has been fairly exhaustive. I've gone through quite a few NATO companies to try to find the one that matches best to the Omega NATO, because obviously the Omega NATO is ungodly expensive at current retail of about $160 US. That really is a lot of money for a NATO strap. In fact, it's pretty ridiculous. So finding a NATO strap that is comparable to the Omega NATO was really one of my #1 priorities. So what are some of the misses that I found on NATO straps that didn't quite make them compete with the Omega NATO? So I'm going to go through just a few different types of brands that I've come across. Now, before I start picking these brands apart, just know that all of these NATO straps, I absolutely love them. I adore them. I'm huge fans of all these companies I'm about to talk about, but I'm just going to point out some of the things that are similar to the Omega NATO that kind of disqualifies them from this little journey. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is from a company called Time Factors. And Time Factors is out of the UK. And this was really one of the first seatbelt style NATO straps that I had come across. Really good quality weave in there. The hardware is all very solid, good buckle there. Everything looks super, super good. Where I found this to fall short from the Omega NATO is that the hardware, it does not have a floating keeper. So these keepers both here are fixed. So you're kind of, at the mercy of, those when you're trying to tuck the excess of the NATO. So yeah, this really kind of didn't do it for me with the floating keeper, and I felt like the buckle really didn't fit. Good quality, but it doesn't really fit in the style of the Omega NATO. This weave on the outside border of the NATO, the white part, is much looser than you would find on the Omega NATO, which I will show you here. You can see on the side of the Omega NATO, very, very tight weave. This actually adds a bit of bulk. This is a 20 millimeter one as well, but it is a bit more difficult to fit into the spring bars just because it is a good bit thicker than the Omega NATO there. So Time Factors wasn't really on the radar. Good quality NATO, but certainly not in the ballpark of the Omega NATO. And so this is from a company called Phenomenato. Phenomenato is a European company. These NATO straps sell for about $40 US. Takes quite a while to get to the United States, so if you purchase one, you're going to have to wait quite a bit. But where they succeeded, the weave on this particular NATO strap, Very dense, very high quality. The side weave is very tight, very good. It does have the floating keeper, which is nice. The buckle is all one-piece buckle, so there's no spring bar there, and that's going to be something I'm going to talk about in the Mora NATO strap when I get to that. But all in all, very, very good. But one thing I want you to notice, if I can show you here between this and the Omega NATO, is this is substantially shorter than the Omega NATO once I have them lined up here. It's a good inch and a half shorter. So if you have a larger wrist, you're not going to get as much of the tuck as you need to tuck in on the keepers on the back part of the NATO. They do make two different sizes, but one is ungodly long. I mean, you're looking at, the other one is probably like this long. I have one, but I don't have it with me here today. So very long. So if you have a larger wrist, Phenomenato, probably not really the way to go, just from, being able to tuck the excess into the keepers. Now, it also doesn't have as many adjustment holes either, so it's not going to fit as big of a wrist, but still a very valiant offer from Phenomenato. And I don't have the Bond style NATO from them, which is something that I definitely would like to pick up soon, but definitely on the right track. And so that brings us to Watch Gecko, and this is their, I believe it's called iridescent NATO strap. The stripes are a bit raised up instead of built into the weave. This is a really outstanding looking NATO strap. Really, really, really cool. Very flexible, very pliable. Where this one falls short, I think, is the hardware. This is just your traditional cheap hardware that you'd find on most any cost-effective NATO. It does have the fixed keeper again. Stitching is all good, looks all good there. The buckle, it's kind of flimsy, but it does have the Zulu Diver logo there from Watch Gecko. But all in all, it's a great NATO. I love this NATO, but not quite up to the standard that I was looking for. So this brings us to the Mora NATO strap, and Mora's claim to fame on their website is that this NATO strap doesn't have any points where it would fail. Their claim is that most NATO straps have spring bars in the buckle, and that is a point that could fail under stress, and they are certainly right about that. So this buckle is one solid piece all the way around, so no spring bar to pop out, no spring bar to fail. Another thing that I felt was really good about this particular company is that all of these keepers are all one solid piece of metal. I don't know if I can show you here, but there's no gap in them at all. I don't know if you can see. You probably can't, but this is just one solid metal piece that it's then stitched around. So these also not very prone to failure at all. I know on the Phenomenato, on their keeper, there is a gap underneath this. Very, very slight, but they sort of, I'm assuming they just bent it into position rather than stitching around it. If I'm not correct on that, please correct me in the comments. This is all polished. The polishing is very, very nice on really everything, and the Mora logo is very, very similar to what they did on the Omega NATO. The etching, if you can see, it's very close. It looks very good. Very, very good. So one failure that I have come across in pretty much every company that has tried to make this particular Bond NATO is the color of the gray stripes. Now, Mora has done a pretty good job with this, but as you can see, it is not quite the exact same color as the Omega. The Omega it's more of I guess a bluish kind of gray stripe. That's the best way I can describe it. But I will tell you, in wearing both of these out, because I've been wearing a Mora NATO for pretty much the past couple weeks, is it becomes indistinguishable from the Omega NATO. It really, really does as far as the coloring. So, this is the difference between these two in color is so minuscule that, to the naked eye, if you're not going to notice the difference when you have it on your wrist. You'll also notice the proportions. The proportions are pretty much the same. Like they have the fixed spring bar in the same position, the floating keeper is in the same position. This is pretty much in the same position. So as far as sizing goes, they are almost identical, almost identical. But here are a couple things that I think the Mora strap gets right and closer to Omega than anybody else. So let's look at length here. So length, if you notice, the Mora strap is about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch longer than the Omega NATO. So this is going to fit a larger size wrist than the Omega would in regards to being able to still tuck the excess in the back of the keeper, which that's really like the coolest thing, that you do with the NATO is that little tuck gives it that nice little extra pop. But this is a little bit longer. So looking at the weave pattern, it is very, very similar. The weave on the sides, on the border is very, very tight, just like the Omega NATO. The stripes, I mean, you can see the gray stripes, they have very similar notches, kind of printing notches cut out of them. It's very, very accurate to that. And, one could argue, well, Mora's not trying to copy the Bond NATO. Okay, well, they are, because this is Omega's NATO that they came out for the James Bond movie Spectre. It wasn't even on the radar before that movie came out, so then everybody kind of started copying it. So, to say that they're not trying to do that, it's very clear to me that they are. Now, as far as holes go, the Omega has 2 more holes for adjustments than the Mora does. When I wear the Mora NATO, I wear it on the 4th hole down, and the Omega NATO, I usually wear it on the 6th hole down. So as far as small wrists go, the Omega is going to fit a smaller wrist for sure. About 1 inch smaller wrist than the Mora can. But you're really kind of splitting hairs when you get to that point. I think the Mora could probably comfortably go down to, maybe a 6.5 inch wrist and you still be okay. You could probably go down to a 6 inch wrist with the Omega. So looking at the buckles, I mean, obviously the Omega NATO buckle is much nicer, but it does have that failure point of the spring bars. So I can't really say which buckle would be better. This one's gonna be more reliable, I would say, than this one. I mean, it's unlikely that it would fail, but it is still a failure point on the NATO strap. So if you're looking at a tie on the buckle and you're looking at a tie on all the keepers, it would appear, even though they are slightly different. I think the Omega may be a little bit thicker. And then you're looking at just barely the quality of the weave barely being edged out. The Omega is just a fraction better. And then you have more length on the Mora. Guys, at this point, I can't justify telling you to go get an Omega NATO when you have this, which is virtually identical in quality. The holes are pretty much cut the same. I couldn't, in my right mind, recommend the Omega NATO over this one. And right now, Mora offers 4 different types of straps. So you've got the Bond NATO, as I've been showing you. They have a black NATO strap, which is very similar to the Omega Speedmaster Man on the Moon version, which I have one of those. I'll show you in just a second. They have gray, which Omega does that. But the coolest one that I think, and this is what I've been wearing, and Omega does not, to my knowledge, offer this. They make a Connery strap in this kind of quality, and this is the one that I really wanted to get because Omega doesn't offer it. So I was like, well, heck yeah. So that's what I would really like to see Mora do. Mora do more of. Yes, I'd like to see them make some colors that Omega doesn't offer, or maybe offer some more of the colors that Omega does offer, so everybody has the chance to kind of get that particular look. But this Connery strap, is it the right shade of color for the Connery strap? No, it's not. I mean, it could be a little bit darker, but it's really nice and it really pops, and it's something that you know, it just really caught my eye, and I just love it. This is the one I've been wearing for the past 2 weeks, and as you can see, no fraying, great quality, really, really like it. No problems there. This is going to be the Omega Speedmaster Man on the Moon NATO and the Mora NATO here, and guys, yeah, it's pretty much identical. Now, you're going to have to ignore this weave. I kind of, you know, was a little bit rough with it, putting it through a watch, so I kind of frayed it up on the sides on the Omega, but when it was in its original condition, I mean, you certainly could not tell the difference between these two. So, I mean, this right there ought to tell you that, you know, Mora has really nailed it in this regard. And gosh, I don't even have still got the little plastic on there because I haven't really worn this black one yet. But yeah, guys, you're looking at an American company. So if you're in the United States, I've gotten these NATOs in probably 3 or 4 days. They're based out of Louisville, Kentucky. And man, it's really cool to support an American company, especially in times like this. And I just think they've absolutely nailed these. And guys, $16 at the moment. $16. So you're looking at, you know, $160 and $16. I mean, come on. So yeah, get it. You'll love it, I promise. And they offer a size. They offer 20 and 22 millimeters, so you're going to fit your SKXs, you know, a lot of Seikos you're going to be able to fit. And they also offer brushed instead of polished, so morastraps.com. And, you know, I'm just going to say I'm not affiliated with Mora in any way. I got these straps. I purchased them myself. They were not given to me for a review. This is just something I was really excited about, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So one other cool thing is Mora is really concerned about the environment. So the straps come in this cool little cotton bag that's biodegradable, and they also use biodegradable packaging when they ship because they're concerned about the environment. They don't want to leave a carbon footprint. I think that's really cool, you know, if you're into that stuff. But this is also a great place to keep your watch, keep your NATO straps. But each one of these comes with this cool little bag. So yeah. Hey, $16, get it done, go buy it, you'll love it. See you next time.